interact on your own level. You can always mute your video, etc., if you choose to do so. But the recording has already started, so we'll proceed on that basis. But you can see on your screen, first slide, welcome. This is to Surrey County Council's market engagement event. It's all about care and support in extra care housing, and what our plans are for the future. It's to run approximately for the next 1.5 hours. And I just want to, first of all, introduce each person, and then what I'll do is I'll tell you about how the event will work out. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm John Woodruff. I'm Senior Commissioning Manager in the Older People's Commissioning Team at Surrey County Council, and I'm the lead Commissioner for Extra Care Housing in the county. I'll pass you over to Phoebe, if you'd like to say hello, Phoebe.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Phoebe Tomlinander, and I'm a Commissioning Manager in the Older People's Team, focused on extra care housing.
First of all, we've got Ian Clark.
Hi everyone, I'm Ian Clark. I'm a Strategic Procurement Manager. I lead on all the procurement for the Council's Accommodation, Care and Support programme.
Sam?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Sam Silburn, Strategic Procurement Manager for Adult Social Care and Public Health in Surrey.
And Andy?
Morning, everyone. My name is Melinda Ingles. I'm a Senior Manager and I'm responsible for the operational model for extra care in the Council.
Peter?
Morning, I'm Peter Merchant. I'm Investment Director at Octopus Real Estate. We have a registered provider which will be working on this project along with Surrey County Council. Okay.
Harinder?
Morning, everyone. I'm Harinder. I'm Head of Housing Division at Pinnacle Group, and the area I look after is all our later living. That's existing supported schemes, extra care, and all new developments across the group.
Thank you very much, all. So we're all going to be presenting various slides covering off various different areas of this event. So yeah, we'll be swapping as we go. But yeah, this is the overall overview of the event. Start off just telling you all about what we're doing with extra care housing and our plans for it on an affordable basis across Surrey. What this means for you as care providers by way of an opportunity, and how that would sort of work in practice. So what does it mean to be a care provider? And then an outline of the procurement processes against all of those plans that we have. And then we will move on to any questions you have for us and questions for you to consider. So this is the point that I'm going to let you know about how this event works. So you'll notice that a lot of your video and stuff and your mics are muted. This is so we can sort of control the audience, because there are a lot of you in the room, but you have different ways of interacting with us here. And we'll come to responding to that interaction at the end of the event. So you've got a choice. You can raise your hand, which indicates to us that you want to ask a question right at the very end. So if you raise your hand, we'll make a note of that right at the very end when it comes to questions to answer. But it may be the case that you go, oh, actually, my question's been answered. You can lower your hand again. But if you have a big question for us right at the very end, you want to ask us after hearing everything, keep your hand raised, and then we'll go through everybody's questions they might have in order. And alongside that, you also have an opportunity of clicking the Q&A button, and you can type in questions for us. Some questions you might ask might be saying, I can't see anything, or other things like that, which are housekeeping problems, and we'll try and respond directly to that. But if you've got big old questions that otherwise people might raise their hands to, we'll also cover those off later too. So just because you can't speak right now doesn't mean you won't be able to speak later. You have the opportunity to do that. But after that, we'll have about 3 questions for everybody to ponder and consider. And at that stage, if people put their hand up, then we'll get you to sort of talk to us and also see if you've got any thoughts of some of the questions we got for you. So that's where the interaction lies. So don't worry if you can't really have say your piece right now. You'll have the opportunity later, okay? Thank you for your understanding. So first of all, we are going to be passing over to Phoebe for the first couple of slides. So over to you, Phoebe.
Thank you. Yeah, so first up, what exactly is extra care housing? So extra care housing consists of self-contained apartments within one setting, which there are also communal facilities. However, each individual apartment is their own home and they have their own front door. The settings will have connections to the local community, so residents can easily get out and about and do the things that they enjoy. But on-site will also be areas where events or social activities can occur, and often outside garden space to enjoy as well. The care provision is separate from the housing provision and will be provided by a CQC regulated care service, who will work closely with the housing provider to support the residents. This means that people can live in an extra care housing setting who have really varying needs, because the care and housing work together to enable independence and well-being. For our affordable settings, we'll be commissioning a dedicated on-site service to meet planned care needs for people who are funded by Surrey, as well as responding to care emergency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay, thanks, John. Next slide. So we've listed out a few of the reasons as to why extra care housing is important and some of the benefits around it. So extra care housing will allow for people to have the care that they want and need in a home which is adaptable and focused on them maintaining as much independence as possible. By appropriately meeting the needs of older people, we will hopefully reduce the risk of future hospital and care home admissions. It will hopefully reduce people's experiences of loneliness by supporting them to continue to access their existing communities, as well as offering a new community on site as well. And it gives older people the opportunity to live in the most suitable accommodation for their needs, which is adaptable over time, enabling them to live independently and for longer. And it also allows for couples to keep living together. And hopefully it will reduce the overall need for unnecessarily moving people into care homes, because there's a lack of alternatives around. Thanks, John.
Okay. Thank you, Phoebe. So what does this all mean for us in our plans? We have an overarching vision of what we want to achieve as a council for adult social care, which is linked to a wider sort of corporate vision. So it's a 2030 vision. So I'm going to read it off. We have vision that we want Surrey to be a uniquely special place where everyone has a great start to life, people live healthy and fulfilling lives, are enabled to achieve their full potential and contribute to their community, and no one is left behind. And that is all of this is a key underpinning aspect of pretty much everything we do as a council. So when it comes to older people's services, affordable extra care housing particularly is one of the biggest gaps that we have. It's one of those typologies of housing as an option that if it's not there, people are left with very difficult choices, and unfortunately that could lead to unnecessary stays in residential nursing care, and where people live in housing that is not exactly fit for purpose for their needs, they can be in more risk of crisis and emergencies as well, and end up in hospital for long periods of time, which is obviously really bad for anybody concerned. So what are we trying to do with all of that? We're aiming to deliver 725 units of additional affordable extra care housing in the county by 2030. So this is to make sure that we fill that gap and we give the right housing options for older people to remain as independent as they possibly can. A huge area of work, a massive programme which involves a lot of stuff. I think I've got a timer on my slides there, forgive me there. I'm going to have to bear that one in mind. It just suddenly jumped, I didn't even press a button. What do we mean about affordable extra care housing? That means that where people access it, the rents and eligible service charges are to be paid for by housing benefit in general, but it will be the same sort of level, whereby it's fundable for housing benefit, and we may have some people at some stage who fund their own housing, but the main key focus is that it has to be fundable basis for housing benefit here. So a lot of, for context, extra care housing in Surrey is private. It can be very expensive. This is an affordable model. We need to allow people who have very limited means to be able to access it. So how do we go about this? We are working with partner organisations. We have in the room, we have Peter and Harry as external organisations involved with all of this, which is to design, build, finance and operate affordable extra care housing on our land as a primary purpose. So we've had a lot of our own land and we've been focused on that as a starting point. And from that, we've got quite a lot of progress so far. First setting, I'll be putting a nice slide up, give you an idea of what it might look like, is Pond Meadow in Guildford, a former Pond Meadow school site in Guildford. That's actually achieved planning permission. So it'll deliver 59 units of affordable extra care housing and it's due to open in autumn, winter 2025. Seems like a long way away, but you'll see what we have to do in the meantime. We also have the former Bentley Day Centre site in Banstead and the former Pinehurst Care Home site in Camberley that both received, sorry about that, outline planning approval for the development of about 110 units between the two. Outline planning approval is where you've done quite a lot of stuff in the planning, you just have to cover off various other things later on. So it's getting there through the planning process where you get all the permissions so you can start building something. We've got 5 other settings which have been identified as suitable for affordable extra care housing. And we've got outline planning applications being considered on those sites. So they're in Englefield Green, Ewell, Lingfield, Oddshaw and Red Hill. There will be a map of that shortly. And that means we've got approximately 350 units will be delivered, guaranteed through that. We are identifying more sites so that by the end of the decade, we're going to be achieving that target. So what does that look like? Here's an image of Surrey, and you've got the green star there, which is Pond Meadow. You've got the 2 blue ones, which are the ones who've gone through outline planning permission, and the yellow ones are the ones which are going through outline planning permission. So you can see there's a pipeline of development here, and the first one is going to be the one in Guildford. And here is a picture of Guildford Pond Meadow as a site. The red line there shows it's next to a school site, that's the King's College Guildford setting there. There is also a day centre for the community next to that, but there'll be a lot of communal facilities on site at the Pond Meadow as well anyway, which people have access to. So it gives you a bit of a sideline picture of what Pond Meadow will look like as development. View from the main street, which is alongside it there, and the rather interesting image there gives you an idea about the movement of the sun around it as well. So it's predominantly going to be facing, as you can see, towards the south, so lots of people can get lots of lovely daylight. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Peter, who's representing some of our key funding organisations. Thank you, Peter. I think you have to unmute yourself first.
That's a really good idea. Thanks, John. Good morning. Right, well, if we skip on to the next slide, please. So Octopus Real Estate is a business focused across investing on a number of different forms of property. So we provide finance to developers who are building residential schemes, but very much at the core of what we do operationally is around our older persons businesses. So Carrie, who's here with me today, sits in our compliance team, Carrie, but it's not compliance. I've lost the word. But certainly our clinical assurance team to work with our care providers in our care homes fund. So we're the UK's largest owner of residential care homes, private owner of residential care homes. And then also we are very active in the retirement village market. So we work with orderly retirement villages. We own a subsidiary called Rangeford, who operate in that space, but building those sorts of projects. We recently moved into the world of affordable housing, which is my remit. So we're currently establishing a new registered provider called NewArch, and certainly in the case of Pond Meadow, it's our expectation that we'll be working alongside Surrey County Council to acquire and fund the development of the site, and manage that scheme into the future with our partners at Pinnacle. But very central to what we're doing within the Affordable Housing Fund is to accelerate the delivery of new homes, and that's both general needs, family housing through to older person housing, with a particular focus in the older persons market on extra care, but also looking at more sort of support sheltered based accommodation, so category 1, category 2 for those who are familiar with that sort of level of warden assisted housing as well, so slightly lower than extra care. Go to the next slide, please. But this sets out our main investment priorities within the fund. So, like I said, we're looking to play a part in increasing the amount of affordable homes across the UK. So that is both older person and younger person. We also very focused on reducing fuel poverty in the homes that we're delivering, and delivering projects which are as affordable as we can possibly do that, and doing that both through the rents and through what we're doing with people's energy consumption. It's probably worth me mentioning at this point that we are a sister company to Octopus Energy. Octopus Energy until last year was a subsidiary of Octopus Investments, of which Octopus Real Estate is part. We actually demerged from Octopus Energy last year, but we do sort of keep some ties with them. But certainly we're not here in the world of affordable housing and older persons housing trying to sell our energy business or our energy services to third parties, to other parties. So it's a happy coincidence that we've got some colleagues who are really great at delivering positive carbon neutral and carbon negative energy solutions. The other thing for us is, as I'd said before, is around affordable housing for older people. So very essential in terms of what we do, and the business, as I outlined before, with our retirement and our care home teams. So it's very much in the organisation's sort of core focus of the business. And then the fourth theme for us is around supporting levelling up in the UK, and it's sometimes we call it levelling up, sometimes you call it place-based impact investing. So what we're really focused on is delivering positive outcomes on the homes that we're building that go beyond just building bricks and mortar. So working on a project like this with a number of local stakeholders, both from Surrey County Council and Guildford Borough Council, and then looking at the development partners who'll be working with in terms of the supply chain, and local partners who are going to be working on delivering the project. So very keen to be working on things which are creating local employment opportunities. Now, next slide, please. So in summary, we note that there's a significant undersupply of housing for older people, of suitable housing for older people in the UK. We're an experienced investor and developer and owner of homes for older people across the UK, and we very clearly believe and understand that extra care's got a really important part to play, both in helping from a county council perspective in terms of managing their duties around care provision for older people, but also in working with the NHS in terms of reducing cost of beds and ultimately providing much better personal outcomes for the people that we house, that might be achievable through care in their own homes or moving into full care, which might not be fully suitable for all the people that we're housing. So thank you. I think that's my slides, isn't it? Oh no, one more. Which is just really setting out our geography. So as you can see, sort of where we're operating, we actually do have quite an intensity of spots across Surrey. We're involved with quite a few, particularly in the private care market, in supporting the development of some of the schemes there, and also through our retirement business. As you can see, the different dots across the country in terms of where we're potentially lending to different people. That's me now, I think.
Thank you ever so much, Peter. Great. And Harry, over to you. The next slide.
Okay. Hi, everyone, again. We just jump to the next slide, please, John. Yeah, so just sort of one slide just sort of summarises what we do as a group. We not only we manage a lot of housing, we manage over 70,000 properties across, both England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. That includes the stock for the MOD, but we have quite an extensive FM business where we manage schools, universities, hospitals, but across a whole spectrum of services. We do take that approach that what we do in that community and that neighbourhood makes a big difference to quality of lives. So it's just not pure housing management. We deliver a lot of space, a lot of other services that complement that actually and proactively impact people's quality of lives that live there or work there. Okay, next slide please, John. So our extra care, which is part of our later living division, which I head, is a priority area for us, where we're putting a lot of investment and time and resources, where we work with a variety of partners. In the extra care service, yes, we have core services and we've got well rehearsed practices and procedures that we deliver as a core service, right from asset management to the housing management, property management. But it is bespoke in the sense that we work a lot around impact. And we've done a lot of research around the impact around extra care housing. So it's not just what activities we do, but how the people and building operates and how we deliver those services, working with a proactive care provider where we can then measure impacts. And so we've done some work around social impact, about how needs can change with intervention, what we do with how the property works, but equally the activities and initiatives that we provide on the scheme. So this slide is just sort of summarising some of those areas around the wider community, the engagement that was mentioned quite early on. So it's not just everybody within the scheme, but we do a lot of work outside the community and we work with partners around that. If you look at our extra care sort of pipeline at the moment, we currently manage a number of schemes across the country, and some of them we've had for about 10 years. The new development side of things, we've got 23 schemes that we're actively working with partners on. And they range from a first practical completion later this year, right up to we're working with funders to bid for a particular piece of land. So, but most of them are already approved, we're in planning and we have shovels on the ground. And just referring to John's earlier slide, as well as Pond Meadow working with Octopus and Surrey County Council, we're also looking to work with Surrey Council in operating 4 further schemes on that map that John showed you previously. Next slide, please, John. So this, as a summary, is the way that we look at those things is that we've got the community on the right-hand side who they do engage with what happens in an extra care scheme. So these are just not exhaustive, but bullet points as a housing management. We'll deliver these and we'll deliver quality services around that. The care provider, they will have those statutory and primary services they provide, which is around the individual and the care and support on a one-to-one basis. But the approach we've taken is there's a lot of common purpose about what we do, and the schemes that we manage with care providers are that the people who live there, they can't distinguish between, oh, that's a care provider, I can only speak to them for care. Clearly, there'll be some requirements around that and the information we share. But overall, we're both there, both ourselves and the care provider, around customer care, the quality of life, shared access to information, a collaborative culture, the resource allocation so that they complement each other. And activities that sustain both physical and mental independence and impact on social well-being. I need to freshen this up because we have done some good sort of research on the impacts that we can determine from some of all of these interventions. So when you then move around to the going left as then, you see customised residence needs. So all of those things are, individually for that individual tenant. We bring a lot of assistive technology outside of this extra care setting around using Internet of Things, a community app that engages and adopts a belt and braces approach with how we engage with residents there. We look after the property as well with robust property management to make sure ESG targets are being met, the standard of the building is kept to a high spec, how the GM, the cleaning and the compliance around the building, so it's a safe, secure, quality assets, and the environment both has a human interaction, but we use full use of technology as well. So that at the end of the day, it's the residents who are benefiting from that in the way that they live their lives, the physical ability. And going back to one of the key purposes that Surrey are going through this is about how can we intervene so we can sort of delay that process from somebody moving from independent living maybe to a supported scheme with water straight into a care home and nursing home. You know, an extra care can do that, and the things that happen in an extra care scheme can actually lengthen that journey, can actually sustain somebody's needs at a certain level, so that, you know, it's not just a natural progression from low to high and nothing happens in between. We know from our research that we can help that person with that quality of life, and equally not only financial benefits, but more importantly the social benefits for that individual. Hope that helps. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Harry. I really like you driving home those sort of key components, which are actually neatly sort of links across to what Melandy is going to be talking to us now. So over to you, Melandy.
Okay, thank you. Can you skip through to key elements for me, please? So I'm going to talk to you about the care delivery and extra care housing. So the key elements of the service. So what we envisage is for each setting to have a dedicated provider, so that would be supporting tenants through a 24-hour on-site presence, which is waking nights, and this is to respond to emergencies and to support the overall tenants' well-being. The planned support will be there for people in receipt of Surrey County Council funded care, as well as being offered to tenants who are not funded by Surrey County Council as well. It's quite key to tell you that it's not home-based care and it's not a care home. It's a CQC regulated service that supports people in a housing with care setting. We're quite keen to have a very flexible approach, strength-based, able to deliver outcomes-focused support, and support with a recovery following a crisis. So what we don't want is for people to end up going into hospital, be discharged into alternative settings. We want people to return home to where they were admitted from. It's all about partnership, work with the housing management team, managing a mixed needs on site. So we would like to have a balanced community, thinking about the community as having people with low, medium and high level needs. And we will have something which is called a nomination panel involvement. So you're going to ask, what is nomination panel? So nominations is the management of the applications for people becoming residents in extra care. To be eligible, applicants must be age 55 and over. There are some exceptions which we will look at on an individual basis, and usually this is when people have a long-standing disability and the service would meet their needs. People would have to have, or tenants will have to have mental capacity to sign a tenancy agreement, and be assessed by Surrey County Council, adult social care as needing care and support being offered in the extra care housing setting. Everyone eligible will join a waiting list, and the level of priority will be given to applicants based on their individual care and housing situation. Who becomes a resident of extra care housing is decided by a panel of individuals, and that panel would consist of representation from Surrey County Council, the operator of the extra care housing setting, the local housing authority, as well as the dedicated care provider. Next one, please, John. Just around partnership work. So for us in Surrey County Council, we are very keen to co-produce and work in collaboration to make this work. So what do we mean by partnership work? So between the dedicated care provider and the housing management team, we would like them to work together. There will be a service level agreement, care provider use of facilities, including the office, agreed through a license agreement, and contract monitoring meetings will take place regularly to discuss how things are working to provide support. We are also now in the process of co-production with potential residents. and we've got a session on the 20th of March. We will also be engaging with health and social care stakeholders going forward to ensure that we've got everyone's voice in the design of this service. Next slide, please, John. Then just around technology in extra care housing. So we envisage for extra care housing settings to have the infrastructure, for instance, reliable Wi-Fi, charging points and so forth, for us to have proactive technology to be used. The one that will be used in extra care housing will be connected care, which will assist in enabling residents to remain independent. Types of things are the usual things you would find, sensors, devices and so forth that monitors people, but we want to use this technology to ensure that residents are as independent as possible and as an alternative for some of the hands-on care that could be provided that can be done with technology. Thank you, Dan. John, sorry.
Thank you very much, Melanie. And I think we've got a potential double act here. So Ian and or Sam, over to you to talk from procurement perspective.
Okay, thanks very much, John. So these next few slides are just going to be running through what that potential procurement process and contracting arrangements will look like for this programme of work. So as we've talked about through the slides earlier, there's obviously quite a few sites and extra care settings that are potentially going to be coming up in the future. So we as a council need to be in the right position to obviously appoint providers at the right time for these new settings when they're built and ready to go. And looking at this, obviously, where we've got quite a few, we ideally would like to avoid having to do full tender process each time a setting is ready to commence. So the idea we're exploring is looking to invite bids for CQC regulated providers to join a framework for extra care housing care services. Once the successful providers have joined the framework, we're then looking at having the opportunity for mini competitions off the back of that framework for each specific site as and when they become active. So in terms of what that framework agreement would look like, obviously the first step for yourselves as care providers would be applying to join that particular framework agreement when it goes live to the market. You'll notice that the terminology we're using is providers, so we're obviously looking for more than one provider to join that particular framework. In terms of a number of how many we would like to join, that's not yet been decided, but that will obviously be communicated within at a later date when we're planning to go to the market, as well as within the terms of the actual tender documentation. The framework agreement at the time will obviously set out the terms and standards expected for the general care delivery expected across all settings for you as a care provider. And the applications in terms of joining that framework will be around the ability to provide effective care and support within an extra care housing. Once each site is then comes into effect, those questions will be more site specific. The duration of the agreement we're looking at to be around 4 years as the initial period, with 2 one-year extension periods, so running for a total of 6 years in total.
Yeah, to elaborate on that one, Sam, that means that when people are on the framework agreement, that means that the mini competitions can take place for up to 6 years within that time period. Right. So that doesn't limit the length of time of the contract through the mini competitions, if that makes sense. So
correct, John.
That helps clarify. Pass on to the next slide.
Thank you. So the mini competitions, as we talked about, so once the framework has been established, then we've got our providers on the framework, and each site is then ready to go. We would invite mini competitions as and when each site is ready for a care provider to come in and start delivering care. The mini competition process is around a dedicated care provider at the specific site, as we've talked about. And as part of that process, we'd expect a mobilisation plan. There would be site-specific questions at that time for the relevant site, and commercial terms would then be submitted as and when each site is comes into effect, essentially. The site-specific contracts will be awarded with an initial term, as John has talked about here, and with extension periods. So as he said, even though the framework's in place for the total of 6 years, the actual site-specific contracts will start at different dates depending on when they come into effect.
Thanks,
So,
Sam.
Yes, over to you.
So in terms of the mobilisation, so after we've appointed a care provider, the care provider is going to be appointed in advance of the actual housing setting opening, and that's allow us to have the mobilisation of the staff to meet the new tenants' needs from day one. As Melanie mentioned, there's going to be a nominations panel, and you as the care provider will sit on that evaluation and nominations panel. And so you're part of the panel that decides who's suitable for the setting and allows you to plan your staff and needs in advance of the actual opening of the setting. And then in the actual tender process, we'll be asking you for assurances about how you're going to deliver this. So you'll need to explain as part of the tender process what you'll do as part of the nominations panel to make sure you've got the staff in place to meet the needs of the people that are going into that setting. Next slide, please, John. So this is just an indicative timetable of what we're looking at for the tender. So currently we're looking at issuing the tender in July this year. There's going to be a sort of clarification period as part of that tender process, and the deadline is likely to be in August. And then the deadline for tender submissions is around about the end of August on our current timeline. We'd then be looking at doing evaluation of all the responses we receive in September for a contract award of the framework in October this year. And then the framework would commence in November. So once the framework's commenced, we'd have a sort of mobilisation period where everyone gets up to speed with what we're going to be issuing mini competitions. And then that first mini competition will be for the Pond Meadow, which is our first site. And that's roughly going to be from January to March next year, 2025, with a contract award for Pond Meadow in April 2025. And that would then give us a mobilisation period of 6 months from April to October. And then we are hoping that in October 2025, Pond Meadow opens and the contract will start.
Yeah, and to give people an idea how this works. If you look at the Pond Meadows first site, you can start to see what kind of timeframes you'd have. So when we start getting the spades in the ground in future sites, you can see what the kind of the chain of what this means for yourselves if you're on the framework. So here, if we know that a future site is going to be open, you're going back about 9 months to when we need to issue the mini competitions that will happen each time that these settings go through planning route. They're ready, they're starting to be built, we know when they're about to be open. That's how we'll time these things. So this is why we need the time within the framework, because we don't know exactly when this pipeline will come through. We don't know the sequence of every single site. We know when Pond Meadow is going to first come through. So the key thing is make sure you get through the framework, and then it's watch this space for the mini competitions as they come through. So here we go. This is where the interesting bit starts, at least for us, is where we start looking at people's hands and start seeing if people have got any questions for us to begin with. But Sam, can you see who's got hands up? I think we're going into the people list and work through the who's first and then take it from there. So if you can proceed to unmute people and let people know who is about to speak, then they can ask their questions. And then what we'll do is we'll move to the written ones, if that's okay with everybody. So over to you, Sam and Ian.
Okay, so the first person is Ramesh. I'm just going to unmute your mic for you. Ian, you would just need to unmute it from your end. I've just disabled your mic. You'll be able to talk once you unmute.
Hello.
Hi, Ramesh.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hi.
We can, yes. Yes.
Very good morning to everyone. It's been great looking at the roadmap that you guys are setting in when it comes to extra housing care. I've just got a brief question going back to procurement, possibly directed to Ian, and I forgot the other colleague's name who's going to be working alongside Ian. Sam, hello Sam, hi. Sorry. So basically, you know, obviously when the tenders are out, obviously we providers, you know, sort of we sort of invest significant amount of time to sort of write everything about, you know, our services, who we are, you know, and try and level best to sort of stand out, to work alongside the county council. But I've experienced some technical errors and IT issues in practice. So what it did was obviously so sort of say you've submitted all the documentation, you've done everything that you could, possibly, you know, best of your ability and everything, and then now obviously you're waiting on for the time frame when the evaluation is happening. Say it takes about 8 weeks time, 12 weeks time for the evaluations to happen, and then obviously you get your sort of feedbacks and stuff like that. So in my case, what happened was, I mean, I had a feedback to say that I missed out some documentation and attachment after waiting on for about 8 to 12 weeks time. And then that took me by surprise because, you know, I mean, money pricing is a prime documentation that, you know, you're meant to submit when you do your framework tenderings. And when I got the feedback, you know, it turned out that, you know, I hadn't had my pricing index attached to the tendering, which sort of declined my evaluation. But then I went back and looked at it, and then it turned out that I actually had everything, and I also had sort of a key piece of snapshots, which I like keeping it when I sort of submit tendering. So obviously something bizarre went on the IT, and you know, I missed out on the opportunity. And a small provider was really keen to come and work alongside the county. When such opportunity gets missed out, I find it very hard reaching out to the county because you only have one portal and one means of getting in touch with the county once you've done your tendering. So I kind of feel that we need some sort of, say, IT support, if you see what I mean. Not to bother the likes of, you know, Chris and Ian and that, but possibly if there's a team, you know, we could reach out to saying, hi, you know, we've done all this. Can you advise where was the glitch? You know, and what had happened. That then reassures you to say, okay, all right, I've done, you know, this is what's happened. Never mind. Next time I'll be careful. Or, okay, there was a glitch, but we'll flag it. Okay. We'll raise a ticket to the procurement team who's evaluating your application to say you did everything that you could, but there was a system glitch, so they could still honor your submission. So this is John, I'm sure. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, to summarise then, so your question's about proactice and what might happen when things don't go exactly according to plan with your submission, and where to go if you have a problem. Is that what you're trying to say there?
Yeah, post submission. Yeah, after you.
Yeah, Ramesh.
So, okay.
If you drop us the email, an email with details of what happened and what tender it was, but generally there is a proactive help desk that you can contact for all the sort of technical support. And if there is an issue that's prevented you submitting a tender by the deadline, you know, it can be allowed for you to be submitted after the deadline if there was a genuine technical issue. But if you drop me the details afterwards, and I can investigate it.
I think what we could do, just as a reflection of that, is maybe I don't know if Ian or Sam would quite like this, but it's whether, you know, whoever is linked as our procurement lead on our side, whether you could just check in with the help desk and say, look, is there anybody associated with this tender that's raised any concerns, to try and expedite things? Because I don't know, it's just make sure we've got a bit of a sort of belt and braces approach. I don't know, but it's something we could factor in. It's just an idea.
So we can investigate, John.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
No problem. So Sam, who's next?
Okay, next is Liz. I'm just going to unmute your mic, Liz.
Yeah, you'll need to unmute your mic as well.
Yeah,
so.
from your end.
Morning. Just a couple of questions. Is there a minimum criteria of hours for anybody that's going to meet the criteria to move into the extra cares?
Okay, Melinda, do you want to answer that, or shall I? You,
We can
Melanie,
do a
I'll pass
double
to-
act if you want.
Yeah, sure. After you,
Um,
Melanie.
Yeah, so we haven't really set a minimum, and we've purely not done that based on individual need. So when we do assess people's needs prior to delivering something in adult social care, we would look at the individual needs. So it could either be low, medium, or high, but there is no specific framework to say someone needs X amount of care. We want it to be open and flexible based on individual needs, but we want to have a balanced community. So we will work with you as part of the panel to work out, when someone is offered a tenancy, to make sure we keep that in a balanced community.
That's it.
And
And the other question.
Oh, sorry, hang on a second, Liz. I'll add to that just to make it as clear as I can from a sort of care provider perspective. In the mini competitions, there'll be clarity about what's in the nominations agreement. So you'll see the process by which we determine who gets tenancies. And so following on from what Melanie said, is the key thing for us that we understand as a council, because this is on our land, that we know why people are in extra care housing and why it's beneficial for them. And some people may need to be in extra care housing, not necessarily because of personal care support needs. It could be for a lot of other reasons as well. So we don't want to have a portcullis approach, but we will have quite a lot of clarity about the mix of needs we're working towards and the anticipated care hours that will be delivered on the site as a minimum. So you'll have that as a commercial standpoint in which to work towards as a care provider. So I hope that helps to add additional detail for you. But you can move on to the next question if you want to now. Thank you.
Yes, the other one was, obviously you're going to have people within the borough moving in, and a lot of people might have already been receiving care from a different provider. Would it be possible for them to move and the provider moves with them, or is it solely a single provider within the schemes?
Do you want to take that, Melinda, or shall I do that?
Off you go, John.
Okay. All right, thanks, Liz. The dedicated provider is obviously going to be the best outcome for people in the main sort of circumstances for the vast majority of people we would have, because you're always going to be there. Basically, you're always going to have a presence. You're going to have a relatively stable workforce and consistent workforce, and you'll be able to deliver care much more flexibly than the visiting sort of providers. Now, against that, we have choice processes where if people are absolutely insistent and they must have a different provider, then we are not going to stop people from exercising that right of choice. And equally, if somebody has really particular needs that can only be met by very, very, very specialist, I mean highly specialist care, then we may have to say, okay, well, if that's beyond the capability of our on-site provider, which anyway we'd expect to be quite good at delivering flexible care anyway, but there can always be exceptions. We would say, okay, there's an understanding that maybe another provider would be able to support that person instead. But in general, when people move in, we will be encouraging people to go with the dedicated provider on site. That is absolutely key. And as part of any contract, I will be expecting the provider to be able to pick up people's needs as new tenants, and be readiness to meet their needs from day one, where they say, yes, I would like to be supported by the provider. So same goes for people who develop needs on site as well. If somebody hasn't, for whatever reason, got care needs at the point where they are tenants, but they develop them in future, you'd be our first people we would contact as the on-site provider. So I hope that kind of helps clarify all that. Is that okay, Liz?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to mute you now again, and then we'll go to the next person. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Just doing that 2 seconds. Okay, next person is Edward. So I'm just going to allow your microphone. So you just need to unmute from your side, Edward.
Hi there, this is Edward Sibin. I'm from Comfort Care Services. I currently provide care in extra care settings, and I also helped design and model care. So I just wanted to ask, on that note, has the design and model of care been decided? Would you be working on a block contract, or will it be on a flexi core model? That's just the first question, and then I have a second question follow-up on that.
Okay. Essentially, it'll be a kind of core and flexi model. Yes, so there will be having a guaranteed payment on a weekly basis, which is linked to the more of the emergency care side, and then it will be paying on a spot basis for all the planned support. So that generally be how it will work. Of course, further details about all the commercials and everything like that would come through in the tender documentation. So I'm not going to go and sort of break all that down, but that's generally the overall sort of approach.
And just the second question, in terms of learning disability, right support, right culture, and right care,
Yeah.
has that been taken into consideration when building these sites?
Yeah, on that basis, I'm not too familiar with everything to do with learning difficulties, mental health services and everything, but there is a huge amount of work that we've gone into about maximising the accessibility and design of these settings. And obviously, aligned alongside that is consideration for people who may well have or develop dementia and other conditions affecting the mind. And I think the other point to add to that, Edward, is that we're not going to have an absolute flat necessarily age restriction if we know that there are people that have various circumstances. They might be of a different age, but this is exactly the solution for them. So we're doing a lot of work with our other commissioners to make sure that, yes, we have an older people's housing setting here, but we cannot be absolutely portcullis approach about it and just say, right, you have to be whatever age and above, and that's it. And we have to be as open-minded as we can about people's needs and make sure that we're treating everybody as individuals, and we go the extra mile to make sure that we deliver the right care alongside housing support that people require. So in short, yes. I think you have a particular question about one area. And Melandy, is there anything you want to add to that? This point?
No, I think you've covered it, John.
Yeah, but if there's any additional questions about that at another time you want to ask Edward, there will be opportunity. You can send messages through to us through practice, and I'll go on to that in a later slide. Is that okay?
That's okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sam.
Okay, so next we've got Deepesh. Allow your microphone. You just need to unmute.
Hi, hello, it's Deepesh Patel from Bladis Community Care. Just a bit of a follow-up from Edward's question, the first question about the funding model. And a common problem we encounter, I think, with a lot of local authorities is there's an expectation, obviously, of 24-hour staffing. And then, obviously, we understand you're paying for sort of one-to-one care, assessed care needs on a spot basis, and that's fine. But around that sort of core payment, what we sometimes see is a local authority is only funding the waking night, and there's not recognition that actually you need some daytime core as well, because planned care often is delivered, as you know, at peak times of the day, but there are times of the day when there wouldn't be any planned care, but you still need to have staff deployed. So it's just really kind of how you're going to approach that, and whether the core payment you make will cover daytime background hours as well as obviously the waking night need.
Sure. I mean, I think I'll give an indication of our approach without going into, again, too much detail, because we'll obviously have to put pen to paper to make it exactly as obvious and as clear as possible within our documentation. But we are not limiting it to a particular number of hours. I think we are, for want of a better word, quite commercial here, in that we'll be saying, look, we have these requirements. This is what you'll need to deliver apart from the planned support. How would you make this work, and what would be your commercial offer around that? So actually, the key thing for us is making sure that we've got a sustainable service here. And so it is a very open-minded approach to the market to say, what is your best way of approaching this, and what is the best sort of financial option? We obviously divide up the scoring of the of any tender on the basis, which will be through the mini competition, of course, on the basis of finance and also capability and sustainability, which is a quality consideration. So that all gets mixed up together and we come up with a final score, and we choose providers on that basis. So that's kind of your answer, is we're not limiting it to say, oh, it must be this number of hours a week. What we want to know is how much it would actually cost you to make it work. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, I think that explains. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Yep. So we've got next is Kelechi. So I'm just going to allow your microphone.
Yeah,
Just need to unmute.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, all. I'm Kelechi Nduka. I'm Ops Director for Public Care. The question I have really is around how you want to do the tendering process. I was listening, but I couldn't quite decipher the thinking here. I don't know if any of my colleagues had that issue as well. Now I'm looking at, you're looking at 7 different extra cares around Surrey. I know Surrey is huge. We provide care within Surrey at the moment, but they're quite staggered because you have the appointment, which is imminent, and then a couple which you've got planning permission for, and then another further down the line. Is the process such that when you do the mini competition, you have a cohort of care providers who are now qualified to tender for specific?
Yes.
Even though
yeah.
you don't have a timeline per se in mind, because you know how precarious the whole care business is. Whereas people don't meet those criteria that you need in 2-3 years time, that's a long time down the whole process.
Right, so there's 2 things there, is about just clarity about the structure, and the second bit is about the time and what that might mean for people who may be much better prepared, and whether there'd be options further down the line for people to access the framework. So I think the first thing I'd say, just to clarify and add to what Ian and Sam has said, is that the framework is its goal is to identify those providers that we know that if we send out details about a setting and we set out the commercial stuff and the operational stuff, that those providers are ready to just answer those questions, not have to go through the whole shebang about proving what their capability is. That's the framework, and as a result, that means that the mini competitions can be quite shortened and they can be quite punchy, and we can get quite fast answers. And what that does, that lends itself to this pipeline, and this pipeline is where we are so far. There'll be others coming, and that's why it needs to be like 4 potentially plus 2 1-year extension periods, is because this is a long old journey. Now, associated with that, I think your point is a fair one, and it's something we've already looked into, and I'll pass either to Ian or Sam if you want to talk about what you can do about the framework.
So I think the general, so is this around in terms of
opening it up? Yeah.
So we kind of want to build that flexibility into the framework as well. So there might be a point later down the line, you know, we're talking 6 years here, but we might get to the 3rd year and think actually we need a couple more providers to come onto the framework and stuff like that, or you know, depending on anything around this. So we want to try and include that flexibility, because we recognise that we've got quite a long-term contract here for care delivery. So that is something we're exploring as well. And again, that will all be communicated when we do go live with the tender.
And I think that everybody has to understand that's up to us to decide. You can't just knock on our door and say, can you open the framework, please? I think it's up to us to figure out, you know, where we are. We know the market changes, and we know that some people come into the market and other people exit, and we can't pretend to know exactly what's going to happen in the next 6 years. So we've got to have that flexibility in there. So yeah, thank you. I can see you nodding your head, so you're happy with the answer. Thank you ever so much. Sam.
Okay, so next we've got Miriam. So I'm just going to allow your mic.
Oh, hello. Just adding on to Kelechi's point. When the contract is awarded and the date of the start date of when the work starts, I think it's important to put maybe a 2-month timeline, sort of period in there for staff recruitment. Because obviously in Surrey it's always a struggle to try and recruit. So it's just I just wanted to make that point. If we could have 3 months, that would be even better, because it gives you time to train appropriately as well. My other question was around the housing management side of things. Would Pinnacle have an office, a housing officer on site at each of these sites, and how would the maintenance work? Because we work with several other housing providers, and that's always a challenge in terms of the response times of maintenance for people living in extra care and the standard of how the properties are maintained.
Thank you, Miriam. So that's a question for you there, Harry, I think.
Well, the first one, we'll answer them in reverse then.
Okay.
Yeah, we will have on-site staff during the day, and depending on the scheme, but we always have on-site staff, whether it be a scheme manager, housing officer. As I say, we offer FM services, so there will be coordinators as well for activities on schemes as well. In regards to asset management, yeah, we work with the contractors across the country, and who've gone through our sort of due diligence and on our framework, and what we found is that they are very responsive, and part of the agreements that we have is key KPIs on response times, and we perform really well on those. So the emergencies are dealt with in a certain time, but there'll be on-site staff that can deal with those as well.
Oh, we got a hand up from Peter there. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of chip in on that, because obviously with the building owner, so effectively Pinnacle will be providing services under contract to us. So within that contract, there are KPIs established, which Harry's just alluded to, which we would expect them to perform against. Non-performance on those would be quite seriously, we would have serious concerns about that on their performance, and could result in us looking for an alternative provider, Harry. but I'm sure we won't get there.
You've gone there already.
Wow. But that model works for us, not just on Pond Meadow, but across all the schemes that we operate in.
I would say that as well, and out as sympathy, I think one thing I look forward to at all these settings is you'll have residents meetings, regular ones, and facilities and maintenance and stuff like that is always a thing that will get raised, and hopefully we'll have quite an activist sort of population of people that will be very clear about what they need, and we're managing their expectations as best we can. So there will be that responsiveness on that side of just reflecting on things as well. So apart from all the big old key performance indicators about maintenance and stuff like that, be a responsive service in sort of all things really, and we'd expect you care providers to join in that kind of dialogue with residents too. So yeah, Sam, next.
I think sorry John, I think there was another part of that question around appointment. Okay. Yeah, looking at your timetable though, you're looking to appoint a care provider 6 months in advance. That gives enough time for any recruitment training, I think was the other part of the question.
Yeah, we're gonna come to that in the next slide. I think we've got a question of our own just to get people to muse on that a bit more. So we'll come to that. Yeah, but it's good to pick that up, and we'll look into that one next in a moment. But yeah, we've got questions for the attendees too, to see what you think about some stuff as well. So yeah, Sam, you got another person, I think.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. I'm just going to disable your mic.
That's Miriam.
Okay, we've got Steve Martin. So I'm just going to allow your microphone.
Hi, Steve Martin from Care Outlook. Hiya. It's just a follow-on from the recruitment, really. One issue we sometimes come across with new schemes as opposed to transfers is that, say, if you take Pond Meadow as an example, you could have a contract start date of October the 1st and an expectation that we fully staff up for October the 1st, but then the move-in is a lot slower than expected, so then you end up with the cost of the staffing without the income of the support hours. Will the call-offs be issued with either a proposed move-in schedule or a guaranteed number of hours from contract start?
I think I'll start saying things, and then Harry, if you want to join that as well, you have a lot of experience in this area too. But I think within the nominations agreement, which will be sort of made much more detailed than the basic one which we have against the planning permission, we have to work through everything with the housing authority, and there'll be a lot of detail about the initial vacancies. And I think, needless to say, everybody won't be moving in on day one. That would be a recipe for quite a potential catastrophe, I think, if everybody moves in. So we do have to stage it. And we'll have to make sure that we've got a good long list of everybody ready to move in, but we'll have to stage that over a period of time. And it's not just for you as a care provider, it'd be for the housing management as well, to manage people and support people to move in alongside us as well. You might need things like adaptations and other things put in place to get everybody settled, really. But Harry, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, no, it's a good question, Stephen. You're absolutely right. So as John said, the allocations panel is quite crucial. So we start the allocations panel, you know, fairly shortly afterwards. The care provider is appointed because they need to be part of that allocations panel. So we start building up that list around who's going to move in, and what we'll do then is program those dates. Within the design, what's good practice is that we always have a showcase apartment ready 2 or 3 months before, 2 months before the actual practical completion, so that as people are picked up from the allocations panel through needs and suitability for the scheme, we'll start arranging those viewings around that. So, and then we'll program those moves in. What we hope is that at practical completion, we should have, you know, a good list of 60-70% and a phased in program of when they're going to move in. And we'll adjust that so that they get a quality viewing and they get a quality letting at that start. But that's something when, as soon as the care provider is appointed by Surrey, say in this example, we'll start sitting down and then formulating that waiting list with yourselves and programming that. That will give you a better insight in regards to the care support that you need to provide as that sort of gains. But at PC, we do see that a lot of the high percentage of the units already being picked up around that, and we would do the viewing a couple of months before that because the showcase apartment would be ready by then.
Thank you.
I don't think we've got any more listed, well, hands up, if that makes sense, but we have got a couple of ones in the chat, the Q&A chat. Will it be one provider per setting? Yes. Basically, the mini competitions will be per setting, and we'll be issuing a contract per setting. They'll be linked to a registered location. So as a CQC regulated provider, we'll be expecting to set up a registered location at that setting. Because this is Surrey County Council land and the way the nominations will work, these are obviously not going to be care homes, but they are going to be reasonably intensive, and so there's going to be a reasonable amount of care provision on site which you can rely on that is going to sustain a registered location. So each mini competition will be, this is the setting, this is the details around the setting, these are all the other supporting operational documents around the setting. How will you make that work in practice from day one, and how will you oversee that contract with us and work with us to make it as good, high quality housing with care setting as possible in partnership with everybody else. So that's kind of the summary of that one. So yes, in short, we'll be one provider per setting. The next one is, will you be sharing the slides after the event? Yes, we will be. We'll cover that off in the next couple of slides. So you're really clear about the next steps and what you can and can't do and what you have access to as well from this event. I think that's all of that stuff.
There's one that's just come in, John.
If
you have a look, it's around. You just refresh your screen. It's around void management.
Is it okay? Where's this? See if we've got something. Has it just been published?
Yeah.
Void management timescales be 3 months. We need to work through about void management. We've got a very huge vested interest in managing voids alongside Pinnacle and of course Octopus. Timescales, I don't know what you mean necessarily about 3 months, but we will be making sure that there is a briefer timescale so that as soon as a unit becomes available, we're notified and that we can respond as soon as possible. So as soon as the unit is actually fully available for somebody to move in, they can move in. So that is our key fundamental priority. I don't know if Peter or Harry, you've got a comment about 3 months. That's, for me, seems a bit long, unless you're talking about initial vacancies. over to you if you've got any views about that. Then we've got another question aligned to that to answer.
I suppose we're keen that the building fills up as quickly as possible, but at the same time, actually fills up in a way that's going to ensure the success. I don't know what experience you've got, Harry, in terms of fill up in with what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, 3 months is a bit long. So what we, and I'll sort of do offline anything that you need on that. But we know within 2 months of, if the allocation policy works and our viewing works well, that we will have a high percentage already recruited within the 2 months of from PC.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was getting a bit confused about void management timescales. For me, initial vacancy management is first thing, and then void management, which is when things come through. Yeah, 3 months. I think what we will be doing is we'll be agreeing amongst everybody in the room about how we can be as fast as we can to sensibly and safely manage people, so that people can move in quickly and we can get everything up and running as soon as possible. Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's really bad for people if you just move in and most of the place is empty for weeks. So we don't want that anyway from people's side either. So yeah, we will be working to a shorter timescale, I should imagine. Your second question is, will the provider have rental costs for office amenities? Yes. We will anticipate that, although of course, if Pinnacle does not want to have rental costs, I would be very, very surprised for use of the office facilities on site. But that will be all conveyed through a license agreement. There will be dedicated facilities for the care provider. There will have to be consideration for that alongside expectations about how you use those facilities and the things that the basis on which that is permissible. Harry, I don't know if you want to say anything about the license agreement and stuff.
Not in the detail now. It's
No.
just I'm just talking about, because we work under a different loads of different models around that, but certainly in Pod Meadow there will be.
Yeah. Thank you. Any more there, Sam? Oh, we've got somebody. Marion, we've got your hand up, I think.
Yeah. Let me just. I'll just put it back down. It's going to allow a microphone for a second.
Thank you,
Miriam.
Thank you. I just wanted to check. Will everybody be under license agreement rather than tenancies then?
No. The license agreement is between the care provider and the management company. Is about the use of the office.
The office, I see.
Yeah,
okay.
that's all the license agreements to do, is the relationship between the care provider and the management provider, and then there'll be a service level agreement which says, okay, who does what, and that's to avoid people potentially sort of being clear about what care provider staff do and how housing management staff do. But yeah, everybody will be on rented agreements. Yes, definitely. It's all rent provision. Fantastic. Well, what I'll do is I'll move to the next bit, which is where we ask a few questions of our own. And I'm not going to say that you have to answer these now, but if you do, you can raise your hands if you've got any comments you want to make at this stage. But next slide would basically say that if you want to answer these questions separately, you can do through practice if you want to put pen to paper. But I'll go through these questions and see if anybody wants to comment at all on these things. But it's at least 6 months, we think. We've assumed the dedicated provider, so you get through the gates and you're appointed as a care provider for a setting. You'll need to be appointed at least 6 months in advance of a setting opening. And that means that when we look at initial vacancies, that you can look at those tenancies and you can start to mobilise your staff and get people ready so that you can agree how people's needs are going to be met from day one when they start moving in. Is that time frame appropriate? And do people see that as reasonable? I know that earlier on people were talking about 2 months or something like that, but is that an issue, 6 months, or do people need more time or less time? What do people think about that? Yeah, I think we've got somebody there.
Hands up, John. Yeah, this is Kelechi. I'm just going to allow your microphone.
Thank you very much. In my experience, the time frame is very much okay, but it's a double-edged sword. Because if you're looking to pay, we've had contracts where you go in and you have a 3 months lead up to the contract, and you've been awarded, now you need to start recruiting because you can't refuse any package of care. But then you're thinking you need to keep those carers engaged. If you recruited someone, the turnaround time to recruit someone, we're talking 4 to 6 weeks. So you have a long lead up time to actually paying those people. So it's potentially like having people on guaranteed hour contracts. Oh, very well, we're going to be using you when the time comes, but it's not in immediate. So it's something for the council to think about, because someone could be telling you the recruitment pipeline, oh, I've got 20 people ready when you're ready. But in a month's time, a month's a long time in care, I keep repeating, you go and find out, okay, those 20 people actually are not there anymore when you actually need to call upon them. That's just something to think about with the whole process. 6 months is enough time. It's the flip side of it. That's the worry.
That's really interesting you say all that, actually, and I think we need to see how we understand that risk from the provider side. And I know quite a lot about recruitment and the challenges that are faced about in the recruitment market, and the speed as well about the responsiveness of these things. And I think we have to be careful. I think there'll be a question about just reflecting on this, and maybe I'm sort of teasing other people to comment as well, about what our obligations would be for a provider when they are appointed, and at what point the provider would start to take action to recruit people. And I think they're separate things. So you could look at the needs and nominations, but when you actually recruit might be up to you. And I think that'd be a critical thing within the mini competition. I mean, I'm almost giving people sort of a guidance here, but there are lots of risks here that you will need to address. So I really look forward to those kind of answers to these questions on this one. Any other comments in that area on the first question? I think I did see somebody's hand up, but maybe that got responded straight away, perhaps. But okay, yes, Miriam again.
Miriam, right. There you go, Miriam.
6 months is plenty of time. I think probably 4 months would be sufficient, but yeah, it's just to say, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful about defining what role the provider would take and when, as before. But yeah, thank you for that as well. Any more on this question? Okay. Now, this is a really big question for question 2. What potential risks do you see as a care provider? So I think more generally in the management alongside the housing manager of an extra care housing setting. So anybody have any comments about general potential risks that you would foresee, or challenges that you would sort of anticipate in your experience that you might want to raise with us? I'll give it a few seconds. Here we go.
Edward, so your mic is now allowed. Just to unmute.
Sure. I think some of the potential, the good thing I like is that you have a panel where the care provider is part of the nomination. Often what you find is there could be inappropriate referrals coming in, which is not really appropriate for an extra care setting. You also get issues whereby you may have issues with court of protection and the room or the tenancy is just stuck. And therefore that's a void whereby you have an issue with the care provider getting hours on that. I mean, I think COVID was a very big an issue for extra care settings, because it's not a care home, but it's an extra care where you're actually providing domiciliary care services in it, and that became a real issue, I think, whereby people were allowed to bring their family in. I think these are some of the challenges that you do face in extra care settings, and it's about finding that balance, I guess. Yeah.
And interesting, final point there about COVID is key tip for anybody, any care providers in this room. I really hope you've got extremely robust business continuity measures in the case of pandemics. There's so much learning from all of that, and you're absolutely right. it was a very interesting sort of situation for extra care housing in particular, and actually in other supported housing settings, because I don't necessarily think that the central government guidance spoke directly to it, and I think that there's been a lot of learning through doing, and so yeah, reflective practice on that is really important. But I don't know, Harry or Melandi, do you have any comments on what was just said just then? Oh, actually, Carrie, you got a hand up. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I had a question, so
Oh, right, okay, yeah, we'll come to you in a second then in that case, sorry. Harry, Melandi?
Just from our perspective, yeah, there is a lot of learning from that, and you know, and one of the things that you need is that robust business continuity plan, which picks out that, and that's really sort of brought it. There was a lot of learning done from that, so whether it be the technology or the human resource allocation or the services, so it's a BCP that's quite critical.
And on inappropriate sort of referrals as well, I think that was another element of what was said. So I mean, there's quite a lot covered off in that in the nominations agreement, isn't there?
Yeah, I think just around inappropriate referrals, because we have got a nomination and allocations panel, I wouldn't expect us to have inappropriate referrals, because it's a partnership and we would need to work together. And you know, if one party feels that it's not appropriate for someone to be offered a tenancy, there'll have to be a very good reason for us to try and override that. So I think you shouldn't really have to be worried too much about that. We've got a vested interest to make sure that we get the right residents in the settings. So yes, we'll bear that in mind.
And I've noticed, I've been in quite a number of nomination panels meetings myself. There's been always an attempt sometimes to push the boundaries quite a lot, but at the end of the day, although we effectively have the nomination rights, we will be very mindful of this particular setting and the nature of people's general fit in with that. And of course, the housing management team have to be satisfied that the person can actually remain to be a reasonable tenant that can continue to maintain their tenancy, and some of that could be for us to further look at somebody's needs and see whether they need additional or even further support, which could be quite intensive actually, to meet their more holistic needs, and that might actually get rid of quite a lot of risk. But there will occasionally be people that we referred that we think, oh, absolutely not. And I think we'll have to draw quite significant lines and educate our colleagues about, you know, what this kind of site is, setting is, and manage that front door on our side too. So, yeah, Carrie, I think your hand is up.
Thank you. It's just following on from really what you said. You mentioned earlier about low, medium and high needs. Have you already set them parameters? Do you know actually what your exclusion process would be for people that wanted to come and live within the apartments?
Yeah, Melanie, I'll start off and you could add as you like, but we've set up our general sort of views about that, but I think we'll need to look at the nature of each setting. And obviously work with the operator to say, okay, bearing in mind this particular setting, location, and how it's designed and everything like that, what we think optimum levels of care could be, and then we would make sure that goes into the mini competition to set out what that looks like for that particular site. We can be quite specific about splits insofar as we have quite a lot of control through nominations, but as with anything, there is always going to be a little bit of movement on that, but it's an indicative sort of split. But of course, the thing is, we're never going to have an extremely intensive housing setting where everything's medium to high. And when we say medium to high to everybody in the room, it's about relative levels of hours of care that people receive. But actually, sometimes that kind of determination is not quite appropriate, because there can be people who can be quite intensive in needs, but it's not necessarily related to hours of planned support. So we do need to look at people in the round and think dynamically through a nominations panel meeting. How does that fit within the wider context of what this setting is about now, and how dynamically through the nomination panel process, so we get people's voices in the room, which will include the care provider's voice, and of course the majority, well, pretty much most of our settings so far, Pinnacle Group, is to say, look, this person here has got very, very high needs, this person here has got medium needs, or this person here has got low needs. Which one, if we were to sort of choose who to prioritise here, would be appropriate in this instance? So there will be flexibility and a dynamic approach, but we need to set out a general ethos and a general thing to give you guidance when you look to apply for each setting. So I'm talking a lot around it, but I think it's never as easy as it is it? So yeah. Sorry, Carrie, I don't know if that's helped, but it's a bit more of a pragmatic approach over a structure, if that makes sense.
No, that's lovely. Thank you.
Just to echo that, John, I think you're right. You know, there's one example I can give where, you know, the authority did set out with a sort of 40-30-30 model around that 40 high, 30 medium, 30 low. And by the time we got through the allocations panel and so forth, I think we found a greater fit on a 30-40-30 model, which was for that particular scheme. So
yeah, great, thank you. Let's move to the third question. I know we're heading towards sort of 11:30, and I think people may have other things lined up, so see if we can go through this quickly. But it's quite a focused question. We can't anticipate exactly the leading requirement that people have, or the basis on which people have care needs. We may have people who may have learning difficulties, we may have people with mental health needs, alongside people with frailty and physical health needs and long-term conditions, etc. So are there any real considerations for you in doing this for your CQC registration requirements when you look at a new service at this setting? If there isn't, you don't have to put your hand up, but we've already got somebody. So Sam, if you can do the honours.
Yeah, it's Edward. So I'm just allowing your mic.
Yes, there is loads of considerations that need to be taken, and that is the reason I did ask about right culture, right support, and right care. It's because when I registered extra care sites, I'd done a lot of work with CQC registration managers on registering the sites, because size is something that they have an issue with when it comes to extra care. So very high needs, learning disabilities, service users, they would be cautious about that. That is why I asked about the design of how it is. So I think it is would be useful when designing this on the onset, get CQC as part of the team to give you guidance alongside that, because it does become a challenge for providers to register sites like that, especially. I mean, because with the right culture, right support, they're looking at a 6 bed site where they would register it, but we're looking at sites that are 59 units. However, there are ways around it, but yes, it can be is registering those sites.
I think that's really helpful, Edward. And I think that this is the difference, obviously, is where we look at what we have as another strand of our programme at Surrey is supported independent living, which are absolutely dedicated to people with learning disabilities and mental health needs. And those are small settings which are really specialist in those areas. I think this is the question for us, is we do need to get things covered off with CQC about incidental referrals of people who may have different needs, but this is the right outcome for them. And I think like you, when dealing with CQC, they can be very, very black and white about some of these approaches. And I think we do need to have that understanding that it doesn't have to be absolutely need driven in all senses in this setting. So therefore the person must be aged such and such and above, but they may actually have a primary need which is not related to their age. It might be related to other things, and that shouldn't be a barrier for somebody to access the setting. So we've heard some interesting things from other commissioners elsewhere in the country actually on this. So yeah, we'll absolutely take your steer on that and speak to CQC about it and see how we can cover off any of those potential obstacles down the line. So thank you. I can't see any other hands raised at this point. So what I'll do is I'll move to finishing up if people are okay. Great. Nothing going on in the background. So just to reassure everybody, this presentation will be published after the session. This is why we recorded it as well, in case you want to listen as well as read, etc. You can still respond to our questions too. If you look at those questions on there and you do think a bit more about it and you want to send us anything of your comments, we have an opportunity up to 2 weeks after the event where you can give us some written sort of feedback. If you've got any questions, you can also submit those too. So send us some questions. We want to be very open with this and ask people to sort of engage with us and talk about this right from the get-go, so that we can factor any things we may have missed or we may want to think about further into our future approach to the market. And of course, all the questions and answers we've got here will be summarised. I do not envy Ian and Sam's task of going through all those questions and answers. We're going to get those published as well alongside all this. So we're doing our best to cover all bases on all that. But I think all it remains for us to say is thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you very much for your engagement and talking through things with us and listening in. I hope it's really, really interesting for everybody concerned. Be really, really clear about the framework. If this is for you, look at very carefully at all the documentation. There will be further market engagement events where we'll obviously talk more about the framework, advance the framework, but of course we may well be having engagement events about each setting. So watch that space, but don't be a stranger to us in the next couple of weeks. If you want to engage with us on questions and answers of various different ways, please feel free to do so. So on behalf of everybody else, and everybody else can say ta-ra as well if they want to, thank you for your time and we'll see you in future. Thank you. Thank you very much. I declare this meeting over.